I still remember the exact way the cold air hit my face when the airport doors slid open. That December wind didn't bother me. If anything, it made me feel alive. I clutched my suitcase a little tighter, my heart racing with the thought of what was waiting for me. Home. Family. Christmas. The surprise of a lifetime. I had planned this for months, quietly, secretly. No hints in the family group chat, no accidental slip to my siblings. I wanted their jaws to drop when they saw me standing in the doorway. I imagined my mom's scream of joy, the way she'd drop whatever she was holding just to throw her arms around me. I pictured my dad clapping me on the back, his eyes watering though he'd never admit it. My siblings piling on in a messy, chaotic hug. That's what I thought I was flying into. I rehearsed the moment during the cab ride from the airport, watching the snow fall against the window. It felt like something out of a movie, the kind of scene where everything slows down, the soundtrack swells, and life feels almost too perfect to be real. When the driver pulled into my street, my pulse quickened. I paid him quickly, barely caring about the change, and dragged my suitcase up the driveway. The house looked just as I remembered, the string of Christmas lights hanging unevenly across the roofline, the faded wreath Mom refused to replace, the faint glow from the porch light. But something was off. The windows were dark. Not a single flicker of light. Not the soft yellow of the living room lamp. Not the twinkling colors of the tree. Nothing. Just shadows. I frowned, pulling my jacket tighter. Maybe they were all asleep. No, that didn't make sense. It was barely 7 p.m. on Christmas Eve. My family never slept early on Christmas Eve. That was the night of tradition, the night of laughter, of cocoa and music. My key felt cold in my hand as I slid it into the lock. The door creaked open, and the sound echoed far too loudly in the stillness. I stepped inside, dragging my suitcase behind me, expecting warmth, noise, life. Instead, I was swallowed by silence. The air inside was colder than it should have been. The kind of chill that creeps into a house when it hasn't been lived in for days. My footsteps echoed against the hardwood floors. I called out softly, "Mom," then louder, "Dad, guys?" Nothing. I wheeled my suitcase further in, scanning the room. The tree stood in the corner, fully decorated. Ornaments glittered under the faint porch light seeping through the blinds. Stockings hung neatly on the fireplace, each one embroidered with our names. Mine was still there, stuffed and waiting. But there was no fire. No cocoa mugs on the coffee table. No mess of wrapping paper or cookie crumbs. Just emptiness. I walked slowly from room to room, every step heavier than the last. Kitchen, spotless. Dining table, set with placemats but untouched. Living room, too neat, too quiet. Upstairs, every bed made, not a crease on the sheets. I started to feel it then. That sharp pinch of panic in the chest. Something was wrong. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through texts. Nothing new from anyone. I opened the family group chat, expecting maybe a "be home soon" or "running late." But the latest message stopped me cold. A photo. My thumb hovered over the screen as I stared at it. My siblings. My parents. All of them. Smiling under a clear blue sky. Behind them, a castle rose like a dream, glittering spires, pastel walls, Disney World. The caption read, "Best Christmas ever." Red heart Christmas tree sparkles. I blinked, my chest tightening. I scrolled up. More photos. Them wearing matching pajamas with Mickey Mouse hats. Them holding churros, laughing at some inside joke. Dad with a goofy grin in front of a parade. Mom with mini ears, eyes glowing. Every single one of them. Together. Without me. My suitcase slipped from my hand and thudded against the floor. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly weak. My heart was pounding, but my body felt numb. They didn't just forget to tell me. They didn't just leave a note. They left me out completely. The stockings by the fireplace stared back at me. Mine was still there, untouched, like it was mocking me. The room felt colder. The silence grew heavier. I whispered to no one, they went without me. And for the first time in years, the house that was supposed to mean home felt like the loneliest place on earth. When I was little, Christmas wasn't just a holiday. It was the holiday, the heartbeat of our family. I can still see it so clearly, the living room glowing with golden light, the scent of pine needles mixing with cinnamon and cocoa, the sound of my siblings laughing as we tore through wrapping paper. It wasn't just about gifts. It was about ritual. About tradition. About belonging. My mom was the guardian of Christmas magic. She'd start decorating weeks before December even began. I'd watch her carefully unwrap the ornaments, some chipped and faded, each with a story. The angel on top of the tree? That was the one my grandmother passed down. The clay star with my name smudged in paint? I made it in kindergarten. Even when money was tight, she made Christmas feel like a fairy tale. And my dad, he had his own role. He wasn't the sentimental type, not usually. But on Christmas Eve, he became the storyteller. After we'd opened our one present early, usually pajamas, we'd all sit by the fire, and he'd pull out that old, worn copy of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. His voice was deep, a little rough around the edges, but steady. I remember leaning against the couch, eyes heavy with sleep, listening as his words filled the room. For me, that was security. That was love. And then there were my siblings. Chaos wrapped in tinsel. We'd stay up whispering in our rooms, pretending to sleep while listening for Santa's bells. We'd make forts out of blankets in the living room, guarding the tree like little soldiers. On Christmas morning, we'd wake up way too early, racing down the stairs, nearly tripping over each other to see what was waiting under the tree. Those memories, they stitched themselves into me. They became proof that no matter how messy life got, no matter how hard things were outside, inside those four walls, we were family. We were together. And Christmas was the promise of that togetherness. That's why I never stopped caring about it. Even as we grew older, when my siblings started rolling their eyes at family photos, when I went off to college and phone calls became less frequent, I still clung to Christmas. I was the one who'd text reminders in the family group chat, "Don't forget matching pajamas," or "We're still doing stockings, right?" I became the one carrying the torch of tradition, even when it felt like everyone else was too busy. Because for me, Christmas wasn't optional. It was sacred. I remember one year in particular, when things were bad. My parents were fighting constantly, bills piled up, and everything felt fragile. But on Christmas Eve, we gathered anyway. We wore those ridiculous matching sweaters. Dad read the story like always, though his voice cracked once or twice. Mom forced a smile, and we pretended not to notice her eyes were red. My siblings bickered like usual, but underneath it all, we were together. That night, I thought, this is what saves us. This is what keeps us whole. So imagine me, years later, stepping into that empty house. All those memories echoing against the silence. The stockings hanging lifeless, the tree glowing with no one to admire it. Every tradition we built, every ritual we swore mattered, suddenly meaningless, because they were all somewhere else, living a brand new tradition without me. The irony is, I thought I was the one holding the family together. The one keeping the spark alive. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just the one easiest to leave behind. As I sat there, scrolling through their photos, I kept replaying the contrast in my head. Them under the Florida sun, grinning with Mickey Mouse, while here I was, sitting alone in a house full of ghosts. How could we come from the same traditions, the same roots, and yet end up here, me forgotten, them together, without a thought of me? I wanted to tell myself it wasn't intentional. That maybe it was some huge misunderstanding. But the more I stared at those pictures, the harder that lie became to believe. And the cruelest part? I could still hear my dad's voice, reading that old story in my head. Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Except this Christmas, it wasn't all. It was them. And me, alone. The flight itself felt like a countdown. Every mile that passed beneath the plane's wings brought me closer to the surprise I had been replaying in my head for weeks. I boarded with a secret tucked into my chest, the kind that makes you smile to yourself without even realizing. People probably thought I was just another holiday traveler, exhausted, clutching a carry-on stuffed with last-minute gifts. But inside, I was buzzing with anticipation. I'd planned it so carefully. Saved money from extra shifts. Booked a ticket weeks in advance. Wrapped the presents myself and wedged them between clothes in my suitcase. I'd even packed my old Christmas sweater, the one Mom always teased me about, saying it looked like it belonged in a thrift store. I couldn't wait to see her laugh when I walked in wearing it. The truth was, I wanted to remind them. Remind them of the traditions, the little pieces of magic we used to guard so closely. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I showed up unannounced, I could breathe life back into it. On the plane, I stared out the window as the world below blurred into white clouds. The hum of the engines was steady, almost hypnotic, but my mind was racing. I kept imagining the moment, walking up the driveway, my key sliding into the lock, calling out, "Surprise," and watching their faces freeze in disbelief before lighting up with joy. I pictured Mom dropping the mixing spoon she always had in her hand on Christmas Eve, eyes wide, tears brimming. Dad giving that half-smile, pretending to be annoyed at the dramatics, but failing because I'd catch the glimmer of pride in his eyes. My siblings, shouting over each other, trying to hug me first. I wanted it so badly I could almost hear it. The laughter. The clinking of mugs. The rustle of wrapping paper. I could almost taste the hot cocoa with too many marshmallows, the sugar cookies dusted with sprinkles. Every detail was alive in my head, and it carried me through the turbulence, through the long hours of sitting cramped in that seat. When the plane finally descended, my heart felt like it was leaping ahead of me, racing toward the reunion I was convinced was waiting. The airport was chaos, of course, families rushing with oversized bags, kids tugging on parents' sleeves, carolers in the terminal trying to drown out the announcements. But to me, it was perfect. All of it. Because I knew that beyond the noise, beyond the traffic, beyond the drive home, was the moment. I kept thinking, this will be the story we tell for years. Remember the year I surprised you for Christmas? Remember how shocked you were? That thought kept me warm as I stood in line for a cab, snow swirling in the air like confetti. The driver loaded my suitcase in the trunk, and as we pulled away from the airport, I pressed my forehead against the cold window. Streetlights blurred into streaks of gold, Christmas decorations sparkled on storefronts, and radio stations cycled through carols that felt almost scripted for my journey. Every corner of the city seemed to hum with expectation, as if the world itself was conspiring with me to set the stage for my grand return. In the back seat, I scrolled through old family photos on my phone, last year's Christmas, all of us crammed into the frame wearing mismatched pajamas. My mom's grin, my dad's awkward pose, my siblings laughing mid-shove. I smiled at the memory, my chest swelling with the thought that soon, I'd be adding a brand new photo to the collection. One where they'd look stunned to see me standing there, unannounced, holding out my arms. I was so caught up in the vision, I barely noticed how long the ride was taking. Snow kept falling harder, streets slowing with holiday traffic. But it didn't matter. Every red light was just one more beat of suspense before the curtain lifted. When the cab finally turned onto my street, I leaned forward, heart pounding like it already knew what was coming. I handed the driver his fare, barely waiting for change, and stepped out into the freezing air. My breath curled in front of me, white and fleeting, as I dragged my suitcase up the driveway. The porch light glowed faintly, like a beacon. The house looked quiet, peaceful. I told myself it was because they didn't expect me. They were inside, probably playing games, laughing, maybe even reading by the fire. I grinned to myself, sliding my key into the lock. My hand trembled with excitement. I was ready. Ready for the gasps, the laughter, the hugs. Ready for the magic. I had no idea what waited on the other side of that door. At first, I thought maybe I was early. That's what I told myself as I stood in the quiet doorway, suitcase still by my side. Maybe they'd gone out for a quick errand. Maybe they were picking up food, or at the church service down the road. But the silence pressed in too thick, too absolute. The house didn't feel lived in. Not just empty, absent. The kind of absence that lingers when days, not hours, have passed. No faint smell of dinner. No half-empty mugs on the counter. No jackets tossed over chairs. The deeper I stepped inside, the stranger it felt. The Christmas tree glowed in the corner, steady and perfect, as if staged for a photo. Stockings hung neatly on the fireplace. Mine was still there, bulging with gifts. It should have been comforting. Instead, it looked staged. A set piece left behind after the actors had gone. I wandered into the kitchen. The table was bare. The fridge was nearly empty, except for some milk and condiments. It didn't make sense. Christmas Eve was supposed to be messy, alive. Pies cooling on the counter. The smell of cinnamon and turkey roasting. Instead, nothing. I felt my chest tighten. I pulled out my phone. The group chat lit up the screen. I scrolled, expecting maybe an explanation. Maybe someone had texted where they went. Maybe Mom left me a message saying they'd be home soon. But what I found wasn't that. It was a photo. My hand trembled as I tapped it open. And then my stomach dropped, like the floor had been ripped from under me. There they were. My entire family. Smiling under the Florida sun. Behind them, tall and glittering, was Cinderella's castle. Disney. Christmas Eve. Without me. I stared at the picture until my eyes blurred. Mom with her mini ears, Dad holding a cho, my siblings squished together in matching pajamas, the ones I thought we'd all wear tonight by the fire. Their smiles looked effortless, radiant. Like they weren't missing a thing. Like I wasn't missing. I scrolled further. More photos. Them laughing on rides. Them taking selfies with characters. Them at dinner, plates piled high. Every picture a stab. I kept looking for a mistake. Maybe it was old. Maybe they went another time. Maybe this wasn't even today. But the captions betrayed me. Best Christmas ever, red heart sparkles. So glad we decided to do this. Family trip of a lifetime. The word family hit the hardest. Because I wasn't in it. I dropped onto the couch, the phone still glowing in my hand. My chest felt hollow, like the air had been sucked out. My ears rang in the silence. I tried to breathe. Tried to tell myself there had to be an explanation. But explanations require inclusion. And the truth was staring me in the face, they hadn't even thought to tell me. The stockings on the fireplace caught my eye again. Mine still hung there, neat and full, like a cruel joke. They'd stuffed it before they left, like a box checked off a list. Proof they remembered me only in absence. The longer I sat, the more the images burned into my mind. I could see my siblings' joy, hear their laughter through the silence of the house. I could imagine Mom's voice calling, smile, as she snapped the photos. All the traditions we used to guard so fiercely, replaced by something newer, shinier, warmer. Without me. My throat burned. I told myself not to cry. But the tears came anyway, hot and heavy, sliding down my cheeks before I could stop them. I whispered out loud, just to hear my own voice. They forgot me. The sound of it broke me more than the thought. I stood up suddenly, pacing the room. I checked the answering machine, nothing. I checked my email, nothing. No tickets, no invites, no, hey, we're doing this instead this year, do you want to come? Nothing. The world outside kept moving, neighbors' houses glowing with laughter and music, snow falling in soft waves, but inside, time froze. The clock ticked. The tree lights blinked. And I sat there, abandoned. Part of me wanted to believe it wasn't personal. That they assumed I couldn't come. That maybe they thought I was too busy. But another part of me, the part that stung like salt in a wound, knew better. You don't forget someone at Christmas. Not by accident. I kept scrolling, torturing myself with photo after photo. I noticed details, like how they wore the same matching pajamas we'd worn last year. The ones I had carefully folded into my suitcase for tonight. They replaced me in the frame, but not in the tradition. And that's what cut the deepest. It wasn't that they skipped Christmas. It was that they lived it, fully, joyfully, without me. I thought about all the years I was the one keeping it alive. The one who reminded them about stockings, who pushed for photos, who begged to keep the fire lit. I thought about how I'd carried the weight of tradition when it felt like no one else cared. And this year, they didn't just let it go. They let me go. I sat back down, staring at the twinkling lights, my reflection faint in the ornaments. I didn't recognize myself in that moment. Because who was I, if not part of them? I closed my eyes, trying to remember the warmth of Christmas past, but all I saw were their smiles under the Florida sun. And for the first time, the word family felt like a lie. At first, I just stared at my phone like it might fix this for me. The screen lit my face with a cold glow, the same kind of glow that made ornaments look like distant planets on the tree. I scrolled back through the group chat again, as if new messages might appear between the lines if I blinked fast enough. Nothing. Just their joy arranged in squares, smiles, fireworks, churros, castle. The timestamp stabbed me quietly, today, a few hours ago. I tapped Mom's name. The phone rang and rang. With every pulse I imagined the sound echoing in her purse, muffled under sunscreen and park maps. On the fifth ring it kicked to voicemail. Her voice, cheerful and automated. Hi, you've reached. I hung up before the tone. I didn't trust my voice not to crack and ruin the speech I had rehearsed without knowing it. Where are you? Did you forget me? I tried Dad next. 2 rings, then voicemail. His greeting was short, almost like a warning, leave it. I left nothing. I opened the group chat and typed, hey. I'm home. Where is everyone? I didn't press send. The words felt too small, like a toy boat set loose on an ocean. I erased them and typed, surprise. I flew in. I erased that too. The cursor blinked at me, patient and cruel. I locked the phone and set it face down on the coffee table. The screen lit up anyway a second later with a tiny reflection of the blinking tree lights, and I turned it over like I'd turned over a photograph I didn't want to see. I walked to the kitchen and poured water from the tap, but it tasted metallic and wrong, like a house that had forgotten how to taste. I tossed it in the sink and listened to it disappear, a thin throat swallowing. When I came back to the couch, my fingertips found the seam in the cushion and worried at it like a confession. The air vent clicked on and whispered at my ankles. Okay. Try again. I called my sister, the middle child who always acted like we were co-captains in the old days. She had the patience Dad lacked, the humor Mom held like a secret. The call connected longer this time, a rare sensation of being tethered to someone, and then, "Hey. You've reached," the beep burned. I almost laughed. It came out like breath through glass. I typed her a text, "Hey, call me when you can. I'm at the house." I pressed send before I could think. The lie inside it made me flinch, "When you can," as if time belonged to them and I was lucky to rent a minute. I typed my brother next, "You busy?" It showed as delivered. No bubbles. I went back to the group chat and hovered. Fine. Be normal. Be light. Be anything but desperate. I wrote, "Did we change plans? House looks empty." Send. Immediately I hated it, gentle, forgiving, giving them an exit ramp I didn't owe. But I felt like I was standing in a snowstorm holding a match. Any heat, even borrowed, was still heat. The minutes stretched thin. I sat with my coat still on, suitcase by the door like a faithful dog waiting for a command that wouldn't come. I reached into the outer pocket and pulled out a small, badly wrapped present, Mom's cinnamon candle from the shop by my apartment. I'd carried it through security like it was a heart transplant. I set it on the coffee table. The cheap red paper puckered at the corners, soft from travel. My phone buzzed. A single chirp, not the symphony I wanted. I snatched it up so fast my wool sleeve scraped the screen. A reply, but not to me directly, just a new photo in the group chat. A nighttime parade now. Lights pouring like sugar over the castle. Mickey in a Santa hat. My family in the foreground, faces glowing blue-white from the flood of spectacle. I zoomed in on the edges of the photo like a detective at 2 a.m. looking for a proof of life. My sister's hair was braided. My brother had a smear of chocolate on his cheek. Dad wore the goofy hat he always refused to wear in colder Decembers. Mom's hand was on Dad's arm, a flag of contentment. I typed, "Looks fun." Backspaced. Typed, "Hope you're having a good time." Backspaced. Typed nothing and slipped the phone into my pocket like it had asked for silence. Then, almost mercifully, another buzz. My sister. A text. "Hey. OMG. Didn't know you were in town. When did you get here?" My fingers went cold. I typed, "Just now. I wanted to surprise you." She wrote back fast, the bubbles sprinting across the screen. "Ah, that's sweet. We thought you weren't coming this year. Work, right? Work." The word folded me in half. I typed, "I never said that." Dots. Stop. Dots again. Right. I think Mom mentioned you'd probably be busy. We booked this kinda last minute. It was a deal. You know how Dad is. A deal. I stared at the stockings above the fireplace like they could argue for me. I tried to keep my thumbs steady. Why didn't anyone tell me? This time the dots took their time. They bobbed in place, a little boat tethered to nothing. Thought we did? Maybe it got lost. Group chat's been wild. I scrolled. Nothing from them to me. No invite, no heads up. Just a flawless sequence of happiness that didn't include my name. I typed, "It didn't get lost." I deleted it. Tried again. Okay. How long have you been there? Came down on the 22nd. Going back on the 26th. It's been great. Weather's amazing. You should see the fireworks. I closed my eyes. The house ticked around me, little mechanical hearts drumming in the walls. I pictured them under palm trees, my spot in the photo replaced by air. I wanted to ask the brutal question, did any of you think of me when you clicked book? Did my name enter the room and get turned away? Instead I typed, I'm at the house. It's really quiet. She replied with a heart emoji and a snowflake, like stickers covering a bruise. Wish you were here. The sentence fell through me like a stone dropped down a well. You can wish for a million impossible things. Doors don't open for wishes. Mom around? I typed. Yeah, but she's in a ride right now. Line was crazy. Can I call you later? There it was. Later. An airport gate for a flight that never boards. Sure, I typed. Be safe. I stared at the thread long after her bubble stopped. The last message sat there like a polite handshake. I set the phone down carefully, as if noise could crack it. I moved to the fireplace and thumbed the edge of my stocking. The embroidered letters of my name caught, small ridges under my nail. It was crammed with something bulky, probably the same lotion I always got, the same chocolate orange Dad pretended not to love and then ate half of. The thought was a soft knife. I pictured myself tearing into it alone, performing joy for no one. The phone rang again. Not my sister. Dad. His name took up the screen in square letters that suddenly felt unfamiliar. I hesitated, counted to 3, and answered. Hey. A wash of noise spilled through, the clatter of a crowd, music blaring in the distance, a high, cheerful voice announcing something about magical moments. Then his voice, half shouted, half distracted. Hey, kiddo. Everything okay? I swallowed. The word kiddo felt like a coat that didn't fit, sleeves too short, shoulders too tight. I'm at the house. The house? Tonight? He sounded surprised, and I tried to locate the surprise. Was it good? Was it inconvenience? Yeah. I flew in to surprise you. A beat. I could hear him move, the noise dampening slightly, maybe his hand cupped over the mic. We thought you weren't coming this year, he said, like reciting a line he'd practiced. I never said that. He cleared his throat. Well, your mom said you had that project, and tickets were going fast, and it was kind of a last-minute idea, and no one thought to text me? My voice was steady, but it felt like a string pulled tight enough to sing. Another beat. Then, almost gently, it was complicated. Complicated. I almost laughed, except there was nothing funny in it. What's complicated about, hey, we're going to Disney for Christmas, want to come? He exhaled, a static-laced sigh. I don't know, okay? Money, scheduling, your sister found a package deal, your mom figured. She figured I wouldn't mind being alone? That's not what I said. His voice dipped, defensive. In the background, someone shouted his name, all cheer and sugar. He covered the mic again. When he returned, he sounded farther away. Look, I can't really talk right now. Parade starting. Can we talk when we're back? Back. As in after it's over. After the story cements itself with a happy ending that doesn't include me. Sure, I heard myself say. Have fun. Hey, he started, then paused, choosing a smaller word. Merry Christmas, kiddo. Yeah, I said to the air. Merry Christmas. The call ended with a flourish of distant trumpets, and my reflection ghosted in the dark screen. I set the phone down too carefully, like it might shatter just from being near me. I didn't cry then. Not yet. I felt something else instead, something low and humming, like a refrigerator in a quiet kitchen. Anger, but polite. Anger with its shoes on. I opened the group chat again, scrolled up to the top of today. I typed a message and deleted it. 10 times. 20. Everything felt either too sharp or too soft. Finally I wrote, glad you're having a great time. I'll keep the house warm. I hit send and immediately wanted to pull it back through the screen. 3 dots appeared from my brother. Thanks. Appreciate you folded hands. Appreciate you. The way you tell a neighbor thanks for bringing in the mail. I stared at that little praying hands emoji until it blurred. The room felt smaller. The ceiling lower. I could hear the house settling like an old animal. I stood and paced. My socks whispered on the floorboards. I opened the fridge just to close it, an argument without words. I picked up Mom's candle and unwrapped it, the paper crinkling like brittle leaves. I set the glass down and read the label, Home for the Holidays. I almost threw it, then didn't. I lit it instead, the match head flaring sulfur bright before settling into a small, stubborn flame. The scent rolled out slowly, cinnamon, clove, a sweetness made to imitate joy. I watched the wick tremble. There, I told the house. Warm. A text from Mom finally arrived, little bubbles blooming. Sweetheart. Just saw your missed call. We're at a show. It's loud. So sorry. How are you? We'll call later, promise. Love you. I read it twice, first as a mother's love note, second as a weather report. Sunny where you are, cloudy here. I typed, I flew in to surprise you. I'm at the house. She sent back a string of exclamation marks that felt like fireworks without sound. Oh honey, that's amazing. Then, we didn't think you could come because of work. Wish you were here. Wish. The word again. That thin, glittery bridge over Real River. What made you think that? I asked. Dad said you sounded busy last month, she wrote. And everything came together so fast. It was like, meant to be. Meant to be. I sat down slowly, like gravity had doubled. Did anyone think to ask me? Her reply took longer. The dots came and went. We're so sorry if we made you feel left out. That wasn't the intention. I stared at intention like it was an absolution that kept the stain. I am left out, I typed. Intention doesn't change the picture. No bubbles. A full minute. 2. I imagined her standing in a river of people, the glow of parade lights painting her face, thumb hovering over apology and justification, choosing neither. Another ping, my sister again, not Mom. Hey, don't be mad, okay? It's Christmas. We'll do something when we're back. When we're back. After the magic. After the hashtag. After the story writes me as a footnote. What would we do? I typed. Another Christmas, but later? Without the day? She sent a shrug emoji. Then, we can FaceTime tonight? Fireworks are at 9. I pictured myself holding the phone up to the candle flame while they watched explosions stitch the sky. Me, lagging in their pocket, a buffering ornament. I typed, maybe. I turned off the living room light and let the tree be the only glow. The house steadied in the dim like a patient learning to breathe again. In the quiet, my phone became a lighthouse. Buzz, light, die, dark. I silenced it. I wanted the silence back, but not the kind I had. I wanted the silence that follows understanding, not the silence that is the absence of being chosen. I stood at the window and watched snow gather on the black line of the street. A car eased past, tires whispering. Somewhere far off, a neighbor laughed, then the sound was eaten by the white air. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass and let it decide the fever for me. You can't argue someone into remembering you, I thought. You can only become unforgettable, or you can leave. The thought frightened me. It sounded like a choice a different person would make, someone colder or braver. I backed away from the window like I'd stepped too close to a cliff. The phone buzzed once more, stubborn under the candlelight. I glanced, Mom again. We love you so much. This wasn't about you. I typed before I could soften it. It became about me the moment I opened the door. I hovered over send. My thumb shook. I exhaled, sent it, and watched the message float into their pocketed universe. No reply. Not for a while. I thought of calling a friend, but the idea of explaining made everything heavier. The story felt silly in the wrong mouth. I flew home for Christmas, and my family took a vacation. It sounded like a punchline with no laugh. The candle had eaten itself into a small lake of wax, flame steady. I picked up my stocking, the one with my name stitched like a promise, and weighed it in my hands. I sat on the floor and rested it in my lap. I didn't open it. I just held it like proof. When the next text came, it was my sister again. Hey, just checking, you okay? I typed, no. But I will be. It wasn't a performance. It was a plan I hadn't figured out yet. She sent back a heart. We'll talk tomorrow? Sure, I wrote. Tomorrow. The safest, emptiest word. I stood, replaced the stocking, and blew out the candle. Smoke curled up and vanished, and for a second the room smelled exactly like endings, like a church when everyone has left and the hymn still clings to the air. The house returned to its quiet, and I let it. I tucked my phone under a pillow like a sleeping pet and listened to the heater turn on, the small, faithful sound of something trying to keep me warm. I told myself I had reached out. I had tried. I had pushed the door and it had resisted. The rest of the night would answer nothing new. And yet, as I turned toward the dark hallway, I felt a question lodged behind my ribs. If they can forget me this easily, what do I do with the part of me that remembers them too much? The question followed me like a shadow down the hall, patient, unsatisfied, alive. Christmas Eve used to feel like a heartbeat. This year, it felt like an echo. The house seemed to grow colder by the minute. Not the kind of cold you fix by turning up the thermostat, but a deeper cold, the kind that seeps into the bones when joy is missing. Every sound, or rather the lack of it, pressed down on me. The silence wasn't peace. It was punishment. I sat on the couch staring at the tree, the lights blinking lazily, like they were trying to keep me company but failing. Every ornament looked familiar, the clay star with my smudged handprint, the little wooden soldier missing half its paint, the glass globe with fake snow inside. All of them pieces of a story we were supposed to share together. But a story without the people inside it is just scenery. I reached for the remote and turned on the TV, hoping maybe some Christmas movie would fill the air. The sound blasted too loud, too fake. Characters laughed on screen while my reflection stared back in the black border of the TV, eyes empty. I turned it off again, and the silence roared back, louder than ever. In the kitchen, I opened cupboards and pulled out a mug. I filled it with water, set it in the microwave, and stirred in cocoa powder. It tasted flat, lifeless. Marshmallows dissolved too fast. I set the mug down without finishing it. It sat there, cooling, a half-performed ritual that meant nothing without laughter echoing over it. I thought about calling my sister again, but the thought of her answering from a parade, shouting over fireworks, broke me. I imagined her smiling while asking, "Are you okay?" The kind of question you ask when you don't really want the answer. Instead, I opened my suitcase. Gifts tumbled out, wrapped in crinkled paper from the trip. A sweater for Dad. Earrings for Mom. A video game for my brother. A book for my sister. Each one carefully chosen, carried across miles, meant to be unwrapped tonight with noise and warmth. I laid them out on the floor in a neat line. Then I stared at them. Then I cried. Not polite tears, not the kind you dab at with a tissue. No, this was ugly, gasping, shaking. My chest heaved like it wanted to collapse in on itself. My throat burned. My face twisted into something unrecognizable. I tried to muffle it at first, pressing my hand over my mouth. But eventually, I let it go. The sobs echoed in the empty house, bouncing off walls that used to carry laughter. I cried until my head throbbed, until my eyes stung, until my voice cracked. I curled on the floor beside the presents like a child again, surrounded by offerings no one would open. It felt like a funeral for the traditions I thought were immortal. I whispered to the dark, why wasn't I enough? The question hung there, heavy and raw. I waited for the house to answer, but of course it didn't. It just creaked and sighed, as if embarrassed for me. After a while, I dragged myself up and wandered to the dining table. I pulled out a chair and sat in the emptiness. The table was bare, but in my mind, I could see it full, the Christmas ham steaming, mashed potatoes piled high, cranberry sauce in Mom's chipped bowl. I could almost hear Dad carving the meat, my siblings bickering over who got the biggest piece. But the longer I stared, the harder the illusion crumbled. The table stayed empty. My plate stayed clean. I whispered again, quieter this time, I just wanted to be there. Tears slid down silently now, softer but deeper. I thought about opening my stocking. Maybe it would feel like they'd remembered me after all. I pulled it down, the weight heavy in my hands. I sat on the couch and peeked inside. A box of chocolates. Socks. A lotion set. The same gifts as every year, wrapped in cheerful paper. I unwrapped one piece of chocolate and let it melt on my tongue. It tasted like sugar and cardboard. I dropped the rest back into the stocking, suddenly nauseous. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. I wondered if they were watching fireworks at that exact moment, while I was watching shadows move across the ceiling. I wondered if they thought about me, even for a second. If Mom felt a pinch of guilt. If Dad thought he should have called again. If my siblings whispered, she should be here. Or maybe not. Maybe the magic was too loud, too bright. Maybe my absence had already been smoothed over, erased by rides and lights and churros. That thought was worse than loneliness. It was erasure. I turned off all the lights except the tree. I sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at it like it might answer me. I spoke out loud, just to make the air less heavy. Do you ever feel invisible? I asked. Not to anyone, but maybe to myself. Like the world moves on, and you're just stuck in place. The blinking lights didn't reply. I laughed, bitter and hollow. Comment if you've ever felt that way, I muttered, half to the empty room, half to some imagined audience. Because right now, I feel like the only one. Hours passed in fragments. I dozed, then woke to silence, then dozed again. Each time I woke, I expected something to change, a call, a knock, a sign. But nothing came. When morning crept in, the house glowed pale and lifeless. Sunlight filtered through blinds, casting stripes across unopened gifts, across my crumpled stocking, across me curled on the couch. This was Christmas. No carols. No laughter. No family. Just me. And in that moment, I understood something brutal. Christmas wasn't about the rituals themselves. It wasn't about stockings or cocoa or even gifts. It was about who you shared it with. And when they left, they didn't just take themselves. They took Christmas with them. When the sun finally rose on Christmas morning, the house felt different. Not warmer, not fuller, but quieter in a way that wasn't crushing anymore. The silence had shifted. It wasn't the silence of absence. It was the silence after a storm. I sat on the couch with the stocking still in my lap. The tree blinked in the corner, ornaments catching the pale light. And for the first time since walking into that empty house, I wasn't waiting. I wasn't expecting a call, or a knock, or a surprise that would undo the night before. It hit me then, maybe the waiting itself was the wound. I had been waiting my whole life for family to mean what I thought it meant. Waiting for them to see me the way I saw them. Waiting for their arms to be wide enough, their love loud enough, their presence consistent enough. And in that waiting, I'd built an altar to an idea of family that maybe never really existed the way I imagined. Because if family was supposed to mean unconditional love, why did it feel so conditional? If family was supposed to mean tradition, why did those traditions only survive if I carried them? And if family was supposed to mean together, why was I here, and they were there? I stared at the gifts I had brought, still neatly wrapped, untouched. They weren't useless, but the meaning I had packed into them had evaporated. I realized something I didn't want to admit: love isn't always mirrored back. Sometimes you pour it out, and it just vanishes into the ground. That hurt. But there was something freeing in naming it. For years, I thought family was a safety net. A guarantee. Something permanent, like a tree with roots too deep to cut. But maybe family wasn't the tree. Maybe it was the people who watered it, and if they stopped watering, the branches withered no matter how hard I tried to keep them alive. And maybe that wasn't my fault. I let that thought sit with me. It wasn't easy. My chest fought it, my brain argued, but some part of me, the part too tired to cry anymore, knew it was true. Maybe blood isn't always family. Maybe family is the people who choose you. I thought of friends who had texted me "Merry Christmas" last night. Friends who didn't even know I was sitting in an empty house, but who thought to include me anyway. I had brushed their messages aside, too focused on the family I couldn't reach. But maybe those simple words carried more weight than I gave them credit for. Because being remembered, even in a small, ordinary way, is proof of belonging. And belonging is what I had been starving for all night. I looked at my phone again. Dozens of unread messages from the family chat, more photos from the park, videos of fireworks, captions full of laughter. It didn't sting the same way it had hours before. It still hurt, yes, but the edge had dulled. Because somewhere deep down, I finally believed it: they didn't forget me because I was invisible. They forgot me because they weren't looking. And that was about them, not me. The difference was subtle, but it changed everything. I stood up, stretching stiff muscles, and walked to the window. Outside, snow had blanketed the street, erasing footprints, smoothing over the world. It was beautiful, in its own quiet way. The kind of beauty that doesn't need an audience. And maybe that's what this Christmas was supposed to teach me. I thought about how much energy I had spent trying to keep traditions alive, to keep families stitched together. I thought about all the times I felt guilty for being the one who cared too much. And suddenly, I realized, maybe it wasn't weakness. Maybe it was strength. Because caring is not weakness. Wanting connection is not weakness. And if they couldn't meet me there, it didn't make me unworthy. It just meant I had been knocking on the wrong door. The word family still felt heavy in my mouth, but different now. Not sacred. Not guaranteed. Just a word. A word that only matters when it's filled with choice, effort, and love. Without those, it's just syllables. I whispered to the empty room, I can still have Christmas. Even if it's just me. The thought scared me at first, but then it settled, warm and steady. Because maybe family didn't choose me this year. But I could choose myself. The stockings were still hanging, the tree still glowing, the house still waiting. The only difference was me. After a night of drowning in what I had lost, I decided to create something with what I still had. Not the Christmas I had dreamed of. Not the reunion I imagined. But something smaller, quieter, mine. I started in the kitchen. The fridge was nearly empty, but I found eggs, a half loaf of bread, and a bag of frozen vegetables. Hardly a feast, but enough. I scrambled the eggs, toasted the bread, and heated the vegetables with too much salt. It wasn't turkey or ham or mom's casserole, but it was warm, and it was mine. I set the plate at the table, lit a candle beside it, and whispered, "Merry Christmas." The food tasted simple, almost plain. But there was something sacred about sitting at that table and eating it anyway, refusing to let absence dictate emptiness. Every bite felt like proof that I could still choose to celebrate, even if the celebration looked nothing like I wanted. After breakfast, I went to my suitcase and unwrapped one of the gifts I had brought, not for me, but for them. The earrings meant for Mom. I opened the small box and let the silver catch the light. They sparkled, delicate and understated, exactly her style. I smiled sadly, then slipped them back into the box and set them on the mantel. I unwrapped another gift, the book I'd bought for my sister. I flipped it open and read the first chapter out loud to myself, my voice soft but steady. It filled the room in a way silence hadn't. For a moment, I wasn't performing. I was reclaiming. Each present, one by one, I opened quietly. The sweater for Dad. The game for my brother. And finally, the candle I'd chosen for myself, a small indulgence tucked into the suitcase almost as an afterthought. I lit it and let the cinnamon scent fill the air. Suddenly, the house felt less like a tomb and more like a sanctuary. Not perfect. Not whole. But mine. I sat back on the couch and pulled the blanket over my shoulders. Snow fell steadily outside the window, blurring the world into white. I watched it drift down, peaceful and relentless, and I realized that the snow didn't care who was watching. It didn't wait for applause. It fell anyway. And maybe that was the lesson. For so long, I thought Christmas only mattered if it was shared. If it was noisy and crowded and alive with people. But maybe sometimes it mattered because it was still here, still possible, even when it looked different. I thought about the word family again. Maybe my blood family hadn't chosen me this year. Maybe they'd been careless, thoughtless, even cruel. But that didn't erase me. It didn't erase my worth. And it didn't mean I couldn't still find joy. Because family can be chosen. Family can be built. Family can be a friend's text message that says, "Merry Christmas, I'm thinking of you." Family can be the small rituals you keep alive for yourself when no one else will. And maybe, family can even start with me. I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in weeks, and began to write. Not about what I lost, but about what I wanted to carry forward. The smell of pine. The glow of lights. The comfort of cocoa, even when it tastes flat. The courage to sit with myself and still call it a celebration. By the time I finished writing, the sun had dipped behind the trees, and the house glowed orange with candlelight. I turned on a Christmas movie, not for background noise this time, but because I wanted to. I let myself laugh at the cheesy dialogue, even if no one was there to hear. Later, I bundled up and stepped outside. The snow crunched beneath my boots, the air sharp and clean. I walked to the middle of the yard and tilted my head back, letting snowflakes land on my face. For a moment, I closed my eyes and breathed in the quiet. It wasn't the Christmas I wanted. But it was still Christmas. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Because even if they didn't choose me this year, I chose me. I walked back into the house that night and stood in the same doorway where it all began. My suitcase still sat near the door, a silent reminder of the expectation I carried with me when I arrived. But now, the weight of that expectation had lifted. Not completely, the ache was still there, sharp and undeniable, but lighter. Different. The house was still quiet. The stocking still hung untouched. The tree still blinked patiently in the corner. Nothing outside of me had changed. But I had. I thought about the moment I first stepped inside, heart pounding with excitement, believing I was about to be embraced. I thought about the shock of discovering the truth, that my family was hundreds of miles away, celebrating without me. That gut punch will never fully leave me. It carved something into me, a scar I'll carry. But scars don't only mark pain. They mark survival. And maybe that's what this Christmas gave me, the reminder that even in the face of abandonment, I can still stand. I can still choose to live, to celebrate, to hold myself when no one else will. I sat on the couch and stared at the tree one last time. The ornaments reflected tiny versions of me, scattered in the glass. For once, I didn't look for anyone else in those reflections. I just saw myself, present, breathing, enough. If you've ever felt forgotten, if you've ever walked into a room expecting love and found emptiness instead, then you know what I mean. You know the kind of ache that doesn't show up in photographs. You know what it's like to scroll through other people's joy while wondering why you weren't invited to it. And if you've ever felt that, let me tell you this, you're not invisible. Even if the people you thought would always choose you, don't. Because sometimes, life hands you an empty house when you were promised a full one. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to be your forever don't show up. And when that happens, it doesn't mean you're worthless. It means their love had limits, but yours doesn't have to. I looked out the window as the snow kept falling, steady and relentless. It didn't care if anyone was watching. It didn't need applause. It just was. And maybe that's how I want to be. Quiet, steady, unshaken. Falling because I choose to. This Christmas wasn't the one I wanted. But it was the one that showed me the truth. Family isn't always blood, and love isn't always guaranteed. But I can still love myself. I can still light the candle, eat the meal, watch the snow, and call it Christmas. Because at the end of the day, maybe home isn't the people you expect to open the door for you. Maybe home is the courage to stand in an empty doorway and stay anyway. The house stayed silent, but I didn't mind anymore. I whispered to the room, to the snow, to myself. Merry Christmas. And for the first time all night, I meant it.